When Penny's beloved grandfather passed away, she was devastated to learn that he had bequeathed everything to her brothers, despite the close bond they shared. But during a visit to her inherited old barn, she made a discovery that would change her and her family's lives forever and bring them hope and inspiration. Keep watching, as a valuable lesson awaits. Growing up, Penny was the only daughter of her parents and had two older brothers, Jake and Ashton. Her parents, who had worked on cruise ships in their youth, often had to travel for work. In order to provide stability for their children, they made an arrangement with Penny's grandfather, Carl, for the children to stay with him during their absences. As a result, Penny and her brothers spent a lot of time with their grandfather, and Penny and Carl developed a strong, special relationship that went beyond the typical grandparent-grandchild bond. Even after her parents settled down in the country and got stay-at-home jobs, Penny continued to visit her grandfather regularly, confiding in him and listening to his stories of adventure and hardship. When Carl passed away, Penny was heartbroken. Despite understanding that he had lived a long, fulfilling life and passed away peacefully, the loss of her dear friend and confidant was hard to bear. The family eventually had to confront their grief and the reality of Carl's passing. The meeting was held between Penny, her brothers Jake and Ashton, and their grandfather's lawyer, Lawrence. They gathered in Lawrence's office to hear the details of their grandfather's final wishes, as he had left most of his possessions to his grandchildren. Jake and Ashton were eager to learn what they would inherit, but Lawrence wanted them to understand the significance of their grandfather's legacy before delving into specifics. As Lawrence began to explain the distribution of assets, Penny's mind wandered. She was still grappling with the loss of her grandfather, and the memories of her mother's tears when they learned of his passing, and the feeling of coldness when she last kissed him goodbye. Lawrence's office was the last place she wanted to be, and she had many unanswered questions. Despite her grandfather's peaceful passing, she found it hard to come to terms with the loss. Lawrence noticed Penny's distraction and asked if she understood what he was saying. She apologized and refocused her attention. To her brother's surprise, Lawrence explained that Jake and Ashton would be inheriting the house, while Penny would receive the barn, which her grandfather had managed to separate from the property, even after the farm had been foreclosed. Jake and Ashton scoffed and laughed at the idea of inheriting a barn, but Lawrence advised them to look into salvaging whatever they could from it. But if you could at least negotiate with the new landlords, I believe you could still gain something from it, Lawrence said with empathy. Something like what you got, a pittance, Ashton added as he and Jake broke into laughter once again. Overcome with emotion, Penny quickly gathered her belongings and left the office, with Jake calling out after her, "Come on, Penny, we were just joking around." Penny didn't place much value on her grandfather's assets. What really affected her was the realization that her relationship with her grandfather may have been viewed differently by him. Her brothers had not spent nearly as much time with him or loved him as she had, and she knew that her grandfather was aware of her financial struggles compared to her brothers. She had hoped that he would have taken that into consideration. If she had inherited the house, it would have provided her with a roof over her head without the need to pay rent. Although the house was old and in poor condition, her brothers could have made a profit from fixing it up. Penny, on the other hand, didn't have much to work with. While she was hurt that she received practically nothing, as the one who truly loved her grandfather, she tried not to let it consume her. She was still rich in the memories she shared with her grandfather, and material possessions couldn't replace that. Penny was a hard-working and determined individual. Her financial difficulties were a result of circumstances beyond her control, and she had been tirelessly working to get back on her feet. But it seemed that all her efforts were in vain. In the end, her grandfather showed his love for her while he was alive, and that was all she truly needed. With a heavy heart, Penny decided to approach her brothers for assistance. She hoped that they would be open to letting her stay at the house until she regained her footing. This way, she could save on rent and start to rebuild her life. She arranged to meet Jake and Ashton for lunch, but things did not go as planned. So what do you say, guys? Can I stay at the house for a bit, just until I get my situation sorted out? Penny asked, sitting across from her brothers at a diner. I don't know, Penny. It seems like you're asking for a lot. Jake replied. Yeah. Why don't you crash at the barn until you're back on your feet? Ashton added, high-fiving his brother with a chuckle. This is not a joke, guys. Please, I really need your help. Penny pleaded. Okay, all jokes aside, this is what you can do. We'll let you stay there, but you'll have to pay rent. Ashton said nonchalantly. Pay rent? What's the point of moving in if I'm just going to be paying rent? Can't you give me a family discount? Penny asked. It's a good offer, little sis. Ashton added. Thank you for nothing, guys. So much for family. Penny said, getting up and leaving. It's either that or the barn, Penny. Jake yelled, chuckling as he and Ashton high-fived again. Penny realized that she truly was on her own now, and she was growing tired of constantly worrying about her financial struggles. She needed a break from it all. Penny knew she needed to get away, just for a little while. She decided to visit the barn, a place where she and her grandfather had spent so much time together. As she drove up the driveway of what used to be the farm, she looked out at the empty fields, wondering how things had changed so drastically. At one point, this was a thriving farm full of life, and now, like her grandfather, it was gone. Penny arrived at the barn, and it was in poor shape. She remembered how, when her grandfather's farming business was still running, she would play hide-and-seek with him in the barn, and how it would often inconvenience his workers. But they never complained because he was the boss. Penny laughed to herself as she looked around, the memories flooding back. In that moment, Penny realized that her grandfather had left her so much more than she could have ever asked for. The memories, lessons, time, and love shared were more valuable than any material possession he could have given her. She realized that what made the barn valuable were the memories she shared there. As she looked up to the hayloft, she saw one of her grandfather's favorite hiding spots and decided to go up and look for him, even though she knew it was silly. As she climbed the ladder, it broke, causing her to fall and pulling down a part of the hayloft with her. Penny was shaken, but not hurt. As she looked through the rubble, she noticed something falling from her grandfather's hiding spot. She went to investigate and found a small box. As she rummaged through the debris, she came across a black bag. Penny opened the bag and was surprised by what she found inside. Inside the bag were stacks of cash, with a note on top. The note read, "To my dear sweet Penny, if you're reading this, then I guess you found me again. I was never good at hide and seek. I left you this barn so you could revive my failed business. Unlike your brothers, I know you truly love this farm and me. This is your home. This money I have saved over the years should help you get the farm and business back on track. I know you can do it. Love, your grandpapa." When Penny finished reading the note, she was in tears. She wished she had more faith in her grandfather, but she was also overjoyed by the opportunity she had been given. She knew that he was still with her, otherwise she wouldn't have thought to seek him out again. With that year, Penny put all her efforts and the money she had been given into reviving the farm. She bought back the farm, shut down her business, and moved to the farm. After months of hard work, she finally earned her first income by the next harvest season. The farm was a success, and when her brothers heard about it, they were filled with regret. They had never taken the time to work on the house they inherited. It was too late. The house was a dump and they could only get peanuts for it. To make matters worse, things weren't going too well in their careers either. They decided to ask Penny for help shamefully. However, unlike them, she provided for them and comforted them into troubles.